Start that now. Right. Okay,
Hey,
so as Coach Britt mentioned, the retro is the final ceremony of the sprint. It happens on the last day of the sprint. And my team, one of them, we actually have team members that are from bands from India, and like the end of our day is really late in their time. We're 9.5 hours behind them, so we decided as a team to move our retro to right before sprint planning on Monday, so that we don't have our team sitting around waiting for a retro that is in the later hours of the day. Um, so you can have some flexibility, but the final thing before you start sprint planning is definitely the retro. Um, so the retro that I like to use is Idea Boards. It's a free website. You come here, you create an account, and it will allow you to create and store your old retrospective boards so you can look back on them if needed. Um, so you can start off by going to create. It's a very simple process. You select the name for your retro board. And for naming conventions, I like to name it something that lets me know what sprint has happened. But typically, your retros are going to be for the same teams, but the sprint name will change. So, Agile Nation cohort number 1 of 2024. And the description, you can write whatever you like. I just put retro. There's various formats, uh, retrospective, starfish, retro, six thinking hats, pros and cons. You can select various sections if you like, but I just like the retrospective format. And it gives you three categories: what went well, what can be improved, and action items. So as Coach Britt mentioned, kind of similar question here is, do we see in a daily stand-up? And a daily stand-up is, what did I work on yesterday? What am I working on today? And what impediments do I currently face? Um, Once you've selected your format and titled each section appropriately, just confirm you're not a robot if you get the captcha, and it'll create a board for you. So you can share the link to this specific board by copying and pasting the link from here. Once you've created the board, you're at this page. And so with my teams, currently give them about 2 minutes to enter their thoughts for what went well. If people are still adding items to the board, then they can continue to do so as we start to discuss them. And this is where the team gives kudos. They shout out others for um, uh, above and beyond performances, for helping the team to meet their commitments, whatever that looks like. So just looking at the past sprint and shouting out all the good things that we notice during that sprint, we can add here. In the same spirit, we have to be candid about our experiences. So we just shouted out some things that went very well for us, but also at the same time, there more than likely were some things that we could have done better. So looking at our processes, our interactions with each other, outside team members, other teams in the organization itself, stakeholders, whatever that looks like. But the focus here is things that the team can control. So if there's something going on organizationally that doesn't really make sense, but we can't make any changes here, then let's omit that. If the environments are not set up and we're doing everything we can, we're raising tickets, we're escalating it as soon as it happens, but we still find that this is a common theme, there's not really much that we can do here. So let's omit that, and let's just focus on the things that we have in our control and can really impact if we set our minds to it and make it one of our goals. So whatever items that come up as what can be improved, we talk to those as a team one by one. Typically, I like to ask, like, would anyone like to expand on it? And most often, it's the person that wrote the comment card. They'll say, hey, you know what, I wrote this. This is what I was thinking. This is what the experience. And this is how I think we could benefit if we took this on as an action item and how the team could grow from that. Allow other people to chime in as well. And at the end, once you've discussed all the items that have been added under what can be improved, we determine which one we're going to actually work on this sprint. And selection for the action item is typically what is going to give us the most value if we were to implement it. So everything else that's not selected for the upcoming sprint that's going to start tomorrow or after this meeting, in the case of that one team I have, um, everything else will be added to our product backlog, and it's going to be added in a different section. So like we have the different sprints set up, like sprint one, sprint two, we would have a section that just says retro, and we're never going to actually implement that into a whole sprint. Those retro items that are in the backlog will be used in the event we don't select an action item from one of our retrospectives. So there are going to be times where your team might just have kudos, but they might not have anything that they experience that they think they can improve upon based on that sprint. And that's fine. You more than likely at that point in time will have some items that you haven't worked on, but have called out. So you can look back at your team's product backlog, go to the retro section, and you can say, hey, you know what, we have these other 4 items that we've discussed in the past. You can select one of these items, pull into this sprint, and work on that, and allow the team to figure out which one of those items they want to pull in. Before you get this started, you typically want to do some kind of icebreaker or activity. I love Kahoots. There are other games that you can do, like try to pronounce the word. Like I've seen some really cool activities. So you can get creative, use Google, try to find free things that you can. Um, People like to play games, and it also opens them up to being uh, more candid and truthful about their experiences. So the icebreaker activity can be pretty pointful or pretty useful if you want to have a meaningful retrospective. Because if you just try to jump into the board, depending on your team dynamics, people might be apprehensive about talking about things that they can improve upon, but they might have some significant ideas on how the team can actually get better. And so just usher people into a environment where they're open to discussing things. And typically that's what the icebreaker gets them open to doing. Um, that's pretty much it for retrospectives. Sometimes you want to like make a repository of your retro boards. Also, during retrospectives, you can pull up your team's metrics over that past sprint. So, looking at Jira, there's a lot of reports. You can look at your burn down chart, and it will actually show you like how the sprint went. So, the burn down chart, if we started at 20 points and we got down to 3 points, so that means we completed 17 story points on that sprint. We'll actually see it track down towards the 3. Um, and it will show you when those story points were moved to done in each story. So if we have a 5 story point done, story done on the second day of the sprint, we will see it go from 20 to 15, and it will just show you that graph over time. And so I allow the team to talk to those metrics before we jump into our idea board. Typically, it's icebreaker metrics, then the idea board. And it also helps with the conversation because they can look at their metrics as a group. They typically have some conversation around that and say, like, hey, this is why this story wasn't moved to done. This is what we encountered. This one wasn't actually ready, whatever that looks like. And then getting into this conversation can be really useful for your teams. So just this time is all about looking back and reflecting and figuring out our plans going forward. Does anyone have any open questions, or Coach Fred, do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, cool. Again, the board is free. Idea boards, that's boards with a Z. Really simple to set up. You can always utilize this. There's only been one instance where I've seen this website down, um, and it came back pretty quickly after that. So this is definitely something you more likely want to have in your tool belt. This is not the only board you can use. There are retro boards and Confluence. So the main program for Jira, that's a repository where we store documents. They actually have whiteboards in different spaces, and I think they actually also have a template for you to create a retrospective. The one reason why I don't typically like to use that is because it puts a name under your cursor, and so everyone can see who's commenting. If you when we go here, you click this from your individual page, it just pulls up a post-it note and you can start typing, but it's anonymous. And so that anonymity actually helps to foster better conversation as well. Because people don't have to say that this is a comment card that they wrote. They opt to do so. But people that don't want to do that can still call out whatever they're thinking, and no one is looking at them because this is what they were thinking. So that's all I have for retro.
All right, question on the burn up and burn down charts. What platform do you use those? Where do you get those, or you just do that on a document or something?
Sorry, Dre, you were sounding really robotic for me.
Can you hear me?
No, sir, you still sound same.
Hey, Coach Josh, do you mind um coming off of Zoom then coming back on, because I think it's the same thing with your audio again. Because
Okay,
I
might
can
be
hear
my end. All right.
Dre. I can hear Dre well.
Okay, so let me drop and I'll join again. And I'm making you the host, Britt, Coach Britt.
Yeah, no problem. And what you was asking, Andre, about the burn down, burn up velocity, we'll definitely go through that right before we stop the recording. That is something part of the metrics that you get at the end of sprint automatically comes whatever type of project software you're using. So we'll go through that right before class is over.
All right, man, appreciate it.
Okay, I'm back. Is that better?
Yes, way better.
Okay. What was your question, Dre?
It was about the burn up and burn down charts, but Coach Britt said we want to discuss it a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
we'll
can pull that up.
actually. Who Coach Josh, was you showing your screen with going with the PSM, or was that somebody else?
I was showing our screen for the assessment. Mr. DJ, do you have the availability to share your screen so that we can go through the practice assessment for the PSM1, or are you occupied?
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of getting my kids to car. When you say share your screen, like I'm on my phone right now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the plan was to go through the Scrum open assessment, the practice one, and just go over the questions and see how we did with that assessment. But we understand that you have other things going on, so it doesn't sound like you would be able to, we will be able to do that at this time with you. But have you had a chance to attempt the practice assessment yet?
No, not yet. I haven't attempted it. No, not yet. I've just been
Okay.
watching videos on different test assessments and different test questions, but I haven't done the assessment yet.
Okay. No worries. So, pretty much the open assessment is 30 questions. It's time boxed to 30 minutes. The questions vary. They have like a question bank that they populate it from. It's not all inclusive, so every question that you might see on the Scrum PSM1 assessment will not be there. But it does give you like a good amount of the foundational questions. So whenever you have the opportunity, we would definitely recommend attempting the assessment. Ideally, you want to get at least 27 questions correct out of the 30, pretty consistently. So we say like the last 3 to 5 attempts before you take the PSM1, We would ideally like to see you achieving a 27 or higher on all of those attempts, and that way you will feel confident and ready to take the PSM1. Coach Britt, I see you have something you wanted to add.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to confirm, Mr. GG, I know you mentioned that you are studying other material. I would say right now, based upon the plan that we put together for everybody, uh, your specific plan, please just go ahead, and the PSM1 is the best test that you should be studying for, because we want you to get the PSM1 certification first within the next, I say, couple of weeks. And from there, based upon your skill set, so on and so forth, you should be able to start applying for jobs. But you got to get that certification. It's kind of like getting a degree before you can start really making those type of moves.
Now I copy that. When you say study other material, I'm saying it's Scrum Master. You're saying like the actual things that you all posted, or because
No,
they're
no, no.
all about the PSM test.
I know you said, I know you just mentioned you were studying some other material. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Or
when you
this,
say other material, you mean like the exact same documents that, I mean, different from what you said, or things
so
are
what,
the same?
right now, the number one focus is passing that PSM1 test.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was saying. The stuff I'm studying is for the PSM1 test.
okay, got you. What I was
Yeah.
saying is this: the main source for PSM is only from that scrum.org website.
Okay.
Everything else is kind of like it may be similar, but it won't be like a direct hit.
Got you. Got you. That makes
Yeah,
sense. Copy.
And there are
yeah,
some
yeah.
websites that don't actually answer the questions correctly based on the scrum.org. Um, and so we've seen some students that were looking at other materials and they came in with questions like, hey, this is the answer. And it's like, no, this is the actual answer. And they're like, I studied this and that's what they said. So not all sources of information are giving accurate information. And so that's why we say let's just focus on scrum.org, since they're the ones that are given the assessment. They're likely the ones that are going to give us the best answers for the assessment and our best chance to succeed on it. So as opposed to like looking at the videos of other people that are doing it, we would say like the scrum.org, just going through it and seeing how you do on the practice assessment is probably like the best experience you can get from this. You might not start off doing the best, but you can go ahead and keep taking it over until you get better, and you'll start to figure out which questions you're getting tripped up on. I think it actually gives you the feedback at the end of the assessment, and it gives you the answer you gave as well as the correct answer. So going through that should pretty get you in a good place for the assessment.
Copy. Appreciate it.
Of course.
But yeah, so but I know a couple of us probably have to get off soon. I really want to hit another topic that's very important. I'm glad Andre asked for it. It was the burn down, burn up chart. I'm going to put some documentation in the chat as well. Sorry, Coach Josh, were you doing something prior, or should I just go ahead with this?
You can go ahead. We were going to do the open assessment. I just posted that in the chat again, the link to the direct page where you start the assessment. So we can do that next class. Please, if you have the time, then be prepared to share your screen. We're going to go ahead and take our time going through the assessment one by one, and we'll work as a team together to support you with the questions on the assessment. But I'm finished right now. Thank you.
No problem. And just to confirm what Coach Josh mentioned, if we have to start class early, please let us know, team. It's best to have the class early with 2 or 3 people as opposed to the class at regular time and there's only just one person or whatever that looks like. So let's move it up. Let's move it back. Whatever you have to do, because I think the next class is the last class. Let's try to. We got a lot of things we got to pile in there from. Asking some interview questions. Like I said, going through this. Just a lot of little wrap ups things, and at the end of the day, getting you ready for PSM1 test. Getting your resume ready and ready to hit the job market. So, like I said, let's get prepared and let's be ready for the last class next week. The next, we were talking about burn up, burn down, burn up. So, as Coach Josh and I emphasize when we're in sprint planning, one of the first ceremonies, the team, if we're using the point system, I don't know if I'm pretty sure you'll remember. If not, please look back at the former classes about this Fibonacci sequence. It's a sequence of numbers that the team estimates how relative this card is going to be, how many points it needs to be. So, prime example, say if developer one says all his cards are going to need at least he's going to do five points worth of cards this sprint, and so then developer two may say, okay, I'm going to do 8. QA person one may say, okay, based upon the cards I'm going to work on, I need a 8. Don't forget it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. 13 is really the max, really 9's the max. And anywhere between 9 and 13 per person is the max that you want to give. Do you want to have somebody give? It's kind of like being in school back in the day. You don't want to have over 18 credits. You don't want to have over 24 credits. It's just too much for a 2-week sprint. But so you just want to start understanding your team before you start denying or say trying to help the team coach them through what they want to story point estimate. But long story short, say if we have 2 developers, 1 8, 1 13. So you do the math, that's 21 points. And so then you also have 2 QA people. One person says 8, one person says 13, just for simple math. So that's 21, 21, 42 points. That's what they're estimating. So, and like I said, this is iteration, aka sprint. So sprint one, they may say around, let's say 42. So the expected may be 42 because that's what they estimated. But then the actual, they may only do 25 points worth of cards. So long story short, this is this is basically a time series from sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4. So say sprint 1, they say 42, they only get 25. Sprint 2, they say they'll say okay, we're gonna go lower this time. We're gonna go 30, but they end up getting say they get 30, then it hits it on the nose. That's what you see right here, and so on and so forth. And that's how you kind of compare what the team is estimating in comparison to what points they actually get, and you'll see it continue to build out down. That's why like I said, this is a burned down chart. My apologies. Yeah. But this is the iterations. Um, so the burn down chart. Wow, this is showing us something else. That's me. See, this is in days, not in sprints. I apologize. So, the team may say they same scenario I just mentioned. They may say they're going to get this many points done, and they only get. They may start off saying, "Okay, total we're doing 42 points." Like I mentioned, no, let's just go with this example as a whole. Say if the team says they're going to do 100 points, and out of the 100 points, this is what is expected. So out of 100 points, if you divide that by 10 days, that's 10 points per day. That's what the team should be averaging. So that's what this line is doing. Expected. So 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, all the way down to 0. By the 10th day, aka 10th day of the work week, 14th day in the 2 weeks in a 2-week calendar, they should have zero points need to be done because they've done all the work over that time. But in actualization, they may have been hitting at first, and so then they slowed down a little more. They may have done 10 points, then about 9 here, maybe about 8, 9, 8, 9. You see how they didn't get exactly the actual, and it took them a little over 10 days, about 12 days to get the cards done, but they were close. If they would have got the cards done faster, then you would have saw the actual red line be going in this way. So in actualization, they would have been done in about 7 days, 8 days, as opposed to 12 days. Does that make sense, team?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, when they say iteration, because they do have a more of it's a lens from the more outer, like a portfolio level, basically management may look at. Instead of looking at it from days, they'll see it from from sprint this to sprint that, from a further out viewpoint. So when I saw iteration, that's why I got mixed up. I do apologize. Don't want to confuse anybody. They do have metrics like that for teams as well, but for burn down, burned up chart, let's stick to, what's the regular example, which is days. So this is not iteration. These are days right here. These are story points right here. And so then
Before
burned
you
up.
move on quickly, one
Okay, go
second.
ahead.
Yeah. So looking at the burn down chart here, the commitment from the team at the start of sprint planning was 100 points, and that was on day 0. That's the first day of the sprint. Again, the blue line is the expected decrease of or progress of work over time. The red line is the actual. Ideally, in sprints, we only look at the days, the working days. So we don't look at Saturday and Sunday because teams aren't working. So that's why there's only 10 days here on the chart. With this one, if a sprint goes out to 12 days, then the sprint planning the sprint didn't end on the expected end date. So in this particular situation, they had their sprint run past the expected end date of the sprint. So typically, if they ended this sprint when they should have, it looks like they would have completed about 21 story points within the sprint, or season. They would have had like 21 points remaining within the sprint. But for whatever reason, this team had 2 extra days in their sprint, which is a deviance from standard practices. And so that's typically not something you're going to encounter where things are going to progress past 10 days. And that is something that shouldn't happen. Not sure what the situation was here, but that is not something that you're typically going to see going forward. So I just wanted to call that out.
Thank you. Truly appreciate that, Coach Josh. And you're definitely right. The average, most scrum teams, all scrum teams, to be honest, once day 10 is there, as mentioned. So this may be not really a good example. In all honesty, they should have cut the graph right here, as Coach Josh mentioned. So they would have had about 20, 21 points undone out of the 100. So they would have done about 80, 79. So thank you
Quick
for.
chime in again, sorry to add, but
No, that's
something that just
perfect.
came up. So the way you know how long the sprint length is, because the question could come up like, hey, you know what? Sprints can be anywhere between 1 week to a month. So why would 12 days be bad in this situation? The expected line shows us how work should progress over time within the sprint to get to complete, which is done. So it shows that we started out at 100, but we ended at 0 on day 10. So this is the ideal progression of work over time. So the expected line shows us when the sprint should start at 100 points with our commitment and where it should end at 0 points on day 10. And so that's how you can look at this chart and say that something happened where the team had 2 extra days in their sprint and that wasn't their planned course of action. So the expected line will tell you when the start and the end of the sprint is in the event something like this does happen.
Team, any questions? We're just trying to clarify things if it was confusing.
No questions at the moment, but I guarantee once I get into the flow of things, I'll probably have some questions.
All right, cool. And so then the same thing is the burn up chart, but instead of showing it going on a downward trend from the left to the right, it's an upward trend going from the right to the left. So showing it pretty much the same thing. Uh, as we mentioned, they probably should have cut it on day 10, not kept it going, but we digress. But this was the expected, the blue again. So they was expected to have 100 story points done by the end of the sprint. which was day 10. But in the red is the actual routine by day 10. Same thing around 79, 80. Took them.
This chart shows the exact information. It just flips it. So instead of starting at our commitment, we start at 0 and show our progression to our commitment with this one. So we start at 0 and we work our way up to 100, and the expected and the burn down chart, we started at 100 and we worked our way to 0. And so literally identical information just flipped from the burn down chart and the burn up chart. A lot of times burn down charts are used, but again, the content and the data for both charts will always be identical.
Yep, it's the same, just flipped it. And the last thing we wanted to show you was something that another metric that a lot of teams capture. It's called velocity. Is this a good one for it? It's not showing much.
Do you have one on Jira, like a Jira velocity report? So Jira is really cool for a lot of reasons, but typically with Jira as well as I think Rally, it's been a few years since I worked with Rally, but one of the reports, like, so you'll see burn down chart, burn up chart, sprint report. You'll also see a velocity report, which will give you the last 5 sprints, as well as what your team committed to. So at the beginning of sprint planning, once you hit start sprint, how many story points were pulled in? And then it gives you the second number, which is how many story points they completed. They don't show you how many story points might have been pulled into the sprint during the sprint or might have been moved out during the sprint. It just shows you what you committed to and what you actually completed. And so as you can see, the gray bar is the representation of the commitment. The green bar is the representation of what was completed. There's also a section under this that gives you the name of each sprint, as well as a numerical representation for your commitment, as well as your actual completed. And so from here, you can go ahead and whatever way you're calculating velocity, with my organization, they like us to do the past 5 sprints. So you will take the most recent 5 sprints and you will look at what they completed, not the commitment. You will add those up, you'll divide those by 5, and you will get your team's current velocity. And so this is a rolling average and not like a standard average. So um, as another sprint gets completed, the 5th oldest sprint is moved out and the most recent sprint is moved in as a part of the average. And so you would recalculate, adding the most recent 5 sprints, again, dividing by 5, and that is how you get your team's velocity every sprint. Thank you.
All right, team, those are the main metrics, but there are always other metrics that you may see, not as important as those 3 though. Those are the main ones that you're going to hear about anytime, from leadership to interview. What's the difference between the burn down and burn up chart? You want to be able to explain that, like how we showed, or how, give an example. Team may have 100 that they estimated for the 2-week sprint, and continue to move from that nature, that manner. Um, any other questions? I know we are kind of almost moving towards another part of class. We do want to go into a off the video parking lot before everybody members who can't really stay for the long time, if they have anything. So any final questions on recording before we go off?
No, I got no question.
No questions.
All right, stop recording.